Hello Wildcats, I'm Zyra Otaya.
And I'm Molly Stitt.
And welcome to the first episode of
Word to the Wildcat Podcast.
On this cloudy day, we will be discussing the topic of food insecurity.
We would like to introduce today's guest from PUSH.
Hi everyone, my name is Bianca Sanchez. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Vice President for PUSH.
And I'm Andrea. I'm the Public Relations Officer for PUSH, and I use she, her pronouns.
Perfect. So to start, can you share how you would define food insecurity and what it means to you?
Yeah, definitely. So a scholarly definition of what food insecurity is defined as characteristics of food insecurity is reduced calorie intake, not having access to healthy food, lack of variety in diets, hunger without eating, and reduced weight due to not consuming enough calories. And I think the most common way we can find food insecurity on a college campus is hunger without eating. So skipping out on meals, not having enough money to purchase meals, or just skipping a meal in general throughout the day.
So when talking about food insecurity, I think there's a pretty big, obvious stigma that surrounds the topic. And so I wanted to kind of talk about the stigma and how PUSH is working towards combating that stigma around food insecurity.
Yeah, definitely. So PUSH on campus runs the food pantries across campus in various academic buildings. And food insecurity is probably one of the biggest stigmas that we probably face, just the words in general. It's really hard for students to connect with saying that they're food insecure for various reasons, whether it be their ego or their growing up, them not really asking for help or feeling like they could ask for help. And I think what the whole purpose of what PUSH is trying to do and what we're trying to do here today is kind of destigmatize those words and use terms like food security and just make sure that a lot of students have resources for that because it is difficult asking for help. And we want to make sure that students have the help and resources that they need.
Yeah, that's really important. So how are these students able to find these areas on campus where they can find these resources?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different signages on campus. We also have a pantry in Blackhall that's a little smaller, and we recently opened up a pantry in the library. It's open Monday through Friday, 12 to 3, and Tuesday, 5 to 8. What's really good about how we run our pantries is that we don't require students to put their names, just their student ID, so it's somewhat anonymous.
We try to keep the students' identity confidential, and the reason we use student ID numbers when accessing the pantry is just so we can gauge how many students are using it. So if we see a lot of students taking a lot of resources from one pantry, we want to see how many students are going to that pantry specifically. And we've also recently created like a grocery list for the Brooks Library Pantry, where it's basically you get a sheet, you fill out what you're taking, and it kind of helps us figure out what we need to like either repurchase or get donations from. Like if we see a lot of students taking cereal or oatmeal, and that's running low quicker than chicken noodle soup, then we'll probably get more cereal or oatmeal for students if they're filling out that form. Your name doesn't need to go on it. Your student ID doesn't need to go on it. It's completely anonymous. We just want to know what students are taking and what they need and what they like, because we don't want to fill a pantry full of food that students don't like and it just sits there, you know?
That makes complete sense. It's great that those resources are available. What type of food do you have in the pantry? Is it just non-perishables? What's going on?
Yeah, so we receive a lot of donations from on campus, like the grab-and-go snacks. We also get some fresh fruit from CWU Farm, which is amazing. So we don't only have non-perishable items, which is nice, especially if, students don't want to eat canned food all the time. And another thing we also provide is hygiene items. So if you're ever in need of like deodorant, toothpaste, any of that stuff, we also have a little area for that.
Yeah, we try to keep a wide range of things open for students. Like we have detergent, like how Andrea said. We have feminine hygiene products, and then like cleaning supplies, I think, too. Another thing that I did want to mention is that we try to be as sustainable as possible, and I know that sustainability is really hard when we're discussing food insecurity or just food initiatives on campus, which is why a lot of the food that is in the food pantry has been donated, which is great because donate the food that you're not going to eat before it expires so other students can eat it. So we try to be sustainable in that way in terms of like not really purchasing things especially if we have it already in the pantry. With that said, though, we do like to purchase like rare or like uncommon items that are donated, like cooking oil. If a student needs cooking oil to cook their, I don't know, like their chicken or their spaghetti, I don't know, something. We like to provide stuff like that as well. And sometimes feminine hygiene products aren't always as available, and so sometimes we'll buy some of those luxury items as well. But for the most part, we try to stay sustainable. And another way that we do that too is we connect with dining services here on campus. They've been lovely to us in helping us with our the grab and go items, which is fresh food in any of the refrigerators. So we have a refrigerator in Black Hall, and we have a fridge in the library, Brooks 101. And basically, they're helping us package leftover food that didn't sell the day before and like freezing that, and then we can use that as actual meals for a student to eat. Granted, it's a day old, but it's better than nothing, and it's not spoiled. So that's also a great way that we're trying to like reduce waste on our campus by connecting with dining and using the resources from the Wildcat farm. Kate's been great in giving us vegetables, fresh produce, anything left over, and yeah.
That's awesome. Kind of connecting these two ideas with stigma and the food pantries, I just really want to talk about that and touch on that, because we hear so many students talking about how they want to utilize the pantries, but there's that stigma around it, and people say all the time, like, oh, there's no judgment, nobody's looking at you, like nobody cares, but we feel it and we see it, and it's stuff that shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of students feel like they need to be dirt poor to access these resources or just anything on campus in terms like this. And we're here to say you don't have to be dirt poor to use the pantries. I know that I use the pantries for like a quick snack. I have no shame in it. Sometimes I get hungry, and sometimes I don't have exactly the funds to like buy a snack. Granted, I do have a job and I am here on campus and I get financial aid, but that doesn't stop me from using the pantry as well, because it is a resource for students. It's for all students. We don't check your financial status saying, oh no, you can't use this. It's really just based off the student and what they feel comfortable doing, and we want to make sure that students feel comfortable using that resource, which also makes food insecurity and like food initiatives a social justice issue in terms of like it's our community that's hungry, and it's hard to go to class when you are hungry, and it's hard when your stomach's growling and the class is quiet. Like sometimes that can be embarrassing, and it's like not only up to us, but it's also up to our administration here on campus, our faculty, staff here on campus, who care for students and want students to have enough food to eat, to just even be able to pay attention in class.
Yeah, and Bianca, you were saying this earlier. You said the pantries are an opportunity to fuel your body when you are unable to afford a snack or a meal. That's an exact quote from what you said at the meeting.
Yes.
Yes. I remember we talked about how you said that fueling your body. It's eating a meal. It's overlooked in our society. It's just, 3 meals a day, I skip breakfast and all of that. It is so vital, especially to get breakfast. And having that fresh fruit, the cereals, oatmeal, and all the pantries sounds like a delicious option to me.
Yeah, definitely. I really love using the term fueling your body. I think that's something my mom taught me growing up. It was never a waste to purchase food, and eating food is never really a waste because you're using those calories and those nutrients to fuel your body to walk around campus, to pay attention when you're studying, to sit in a class and listen to your professor teach, and to even just understand the knowledge that is being given to you. And so I really like using the term fueling your body. It also kind of helps combat sometimes that, like, those thoughts in your head, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't eat this because I want to look a certain way, or I want to, like, lose weight, or it can also help combat those negative feelings of, like, just having a hard time eating food, because at the end of the day, you're eating food to fuel your body. That's what we eat. That's basically why we eat. And so using careful language like that kind of helps me in the long run. So if this helps you, hopefully it does. You could start using that as well.
While we're on the topic of language, we kind of wanted to talk about food insecurity versus food security and how that shift can, and language can make all the difference for somebody looking for these resources. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so when someone's food insecure, it's because they lack something. And in this case, it's them lacking the nutrients, them lacking the food to fuel their body. And so when we use the term food security, it's making sure that students have those available resources so that they're not insecure about their calorie intake or the food that they're eating. And so using terms like food security kind of helps combat using insecurity in a way, because a lot of students don't like that. And it's great to feel secure in something, which is why we have pantries on campus. So students can feel secure in what they're eating, knowing that there's always going to be a snack somewhere on campus for them that's free if they choose to use that resource.
I'm really glad that we have a resource like this, and there's so many ways that are reasons that somebody would need to use this resource. And just from hearing from the collective of the students on campus, you know, these issues can vary from running out of funds on like their connection card to just not having the proper food in their apartment or dorm to have balanced meals. So I think that's really important that we have this resource.
I would say that I know that the terms food insecurity kind of makes people feel some type of way, which is why there's some stigma around it. But I also firmly believe that if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And I think that students let such a simple society norm of like using pantries dictate how they're viewed in society. And kind of like how I said, if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And I know that for me personally, I'll speak for myself. I didn't like food pantries growing up, like when my mom would use them, because I was like, oh, but like we're not poor, or oh, like that makes me feel some type of way. My mom using food pantries, but it's a resource for like to fuel my body, for her kids to eat. And so I know that it's hard kind of breaking that notion of using a free resource. And sometimes you feel like you don't deserve it, but you do. The only critical thing is that you're a student here on campus. You can use this. It's for you. There is no like limitation to it.
I think a big part of why we use the word pantry is because food bank also has a lot of stigma to it, and I feel like pantry, helps a little bit more with that. And like Bianca said, I also grew up using food pantries, and I hated it. I despised going. I just felt like, I just felt lower. And so I feel like the best way to combat the stigma around the word food insecurity is just putting it out there, using it more often so that, it kind of lowers the negativity that goes with the word food pantry. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think another great way that everyone can kind of work on, tackling that stigma is just to be careful of the words that people use and say to those using those resources. I think that sometimes people can be unaware of what their words can mean, and honestly how bad they can hurt someone and ultimately make them not want to use the resource. There's so many examples of that, of someone opening up to someone and saying, they're in need of that resource, and for them to say, well, maybe you're not really in need, or there's other alternatives, or there's people that need it more than you. So I think just everyone working towards just using kind words and understanding everyone's situation and not, putting someone down for using a resource would make all the difference as well.
Yeah, definitely. It takes a community.
So we're going to start talking more about the word choice of resources as well. I think that word itself can have a stigma around it as well, because people tend to see that word as, kind of the same as food insecurity, that they're in need of it. And so can you talk a little bit about that word and how it doesn't have to have a negative stigma attached to it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the intention behind resources is that there's other options for students to utilize, to use for their benefit, for their gain. Usually when we discuss resources, it's often something that's free, which is great because that's what students love, free, especially because we're here at college and tuition is, college is expensive. So when we speak of resources, we mainly want to use it as a way for students to know that there's other avenues that they can go down. Specifically for us, because we are a food initiative here on campus, when we use resources, we want students to know that there's other ways and other paths that they can go down instead of sitting in class feeling hungry, instead of not having enough to fuel their body to pay attention to what's going on in class, or to even have the energy to be around other people, because it's very draining to like be in an environment that's fast paced, especially like a learning environment. And so I think that when we use resources, it's pure intentions. We really just want students to know that there's other options for them to research if that's what they want, that there isn't just one sole way of going about their day. But yeah, 3 in 5 students experience basic needs insecurity, such as food, which is a lot. 3 in 5 students, that's kind of crazy.
Can you clarify basic needs for us?
Yeah, so basic needs, for example, in this case, is food, it's hygiene products, it's basically small things that you need to live your day. It's like a toothbrush. If you don't have a toothbrush, how are you going to be ready for the day?
Right.
Or toothpaste or detergent. Washing your clothes is so essential. Sometimes it's overlooked, but a lot of times students don't have those resources to buy detergent, to buy soap, so that their clothes is clean, or just soap in general so they can clean their body or wash their hair. So it's necessities like that, simple things that make your day go round. It's sometimes something so small that I overlook that I didn't realize that students need.
Okay, so looking at the end of the quarter, before students get their refunds, situations like that, when do we need to be thoughtful and remind these people that the pantry exists? How do we let them know?
So nearing the end of the quarter is when students need the most funding, I feel like. When your refund starts to drain out a little bit, especially after midterms. And around the holidays too, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all those stuff where some of your money is going towards other things. Especially travel, is when students seem to be using the pantry a little bit more often. And we announce our pantry, we announce meetings, anything like that on our Instagram as well, if students are ever wondering where they can find some food or where the pantry is located. During spring quarter is when funding also starts running out a little bit, mostly because it is the end of the year, and you just don't have that money or that energy that you had at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and kind of to add on to that was great. You covered all topics. Another thing to acknowledge is that at the end of the quarter, students who do live on campus are running out of their connection card money, and so it's those students as well who are also utilizing the pantry towards the end. And we found that we normally host a pop-up pantry historically on the day or the week of finals. On dead day, so on Monday when everyone's studying for their finals, we have a pop-up pantry normally every quarter, and that's when we find that that's the most students that come to the pantry to grab snacks or to grab food or anything to fuel them. And then, like Andrea was saying, the holidays are a big one too, especially when campus closes down and dining services is closed and students are still either here living on campus or in the area and don't have dining services to rely on. The pantry also, students also take from the pantry at that time as well.
I think when talking about the pantry, it's also important to mention the importance of a balanced meal, because I feel like a lot of times college students, get they kind of normalize eating one pack of ramen for the whole day, or things like that. So, or not normalized, but it's kind of the situation they're in. So I think it's really important to talk about how the pantry can help make a balanced meal for them and provide adequate nutrition for them to keep them powering through the day.
Yeah, so we have canned food, which is our popular item in the food pantry. We have an abundance of that, and that's great for carbs if you need something quick or something easy. A really great aspect of the pantry now is that since we've connected with the Wildcat farm, we also have fresh produce for them. So it's not just carbs that they're eating, it's also nutrients such as carrots, or if they need potatoes and starch, I guess. And then we also have the dining services meals as well, which are full meals in the pantry.
So when talking about push, we also want to provide other resources for students that aren't on campus or can't access the pantries and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about more resources throughout Ellensburg?
Yeah, so there's also other resources off campus, such as Fish Food Bank, which is another resource kind of like for students. There's also case management, and they do, I believe, like one-on-one sessions with students to help with their financials and understand in a deeper meaning what type of support that they need. So if that's helping them get on SNAP benefits so they can go to the grocery store and buy food and groceries, case management also helps with that.
There's also a clothing closet in the career services, so students often go on job interviews or interviews, so they provide them with professional wear that they can get as well.
So PUSH is still looking for officers to help throughout the academic school year. We currently have 5 members on the board, and if you're interested in joining any of the food initiatives that we have, make sure to connect with us either on Instagram at CWU Push. You can email me. My email is bianca.sanchez@cwu.edu, and we can discuss an officer position for you if that's something that you wish to do and take on a leadership position here on campus. We also have volunteer opportunities for students, and so the pantry that we've been talking so much about also needs student staff to be in there, and we love for students to be in there to connect with other students. It's also nice to see a friendly face, a youthful face. So that's also another option that we have for students here on campus. And we also have our club meetings. So come hang out with us at our club meetings to discuss food security, other food initiatives.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else that y'all would like to share before we close?
Yeah, just to reiterate, we do have a pantry that PUSH stocks in Black Hall in the DCE, which is the Diversity and Equity Center, and we also have a new pantry in the library, Brooks Library, open Monday through Friday, 12 to 3, and Tuesday, 5 to 8.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, Wildcats, on our first episode back. Streaming is available on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Google, and 88.1 The Berg.
Make sure to tune in next week with Katie from the Wellness Center, and we will be discussing sexual assault prevention.
Thank you so much, Bianca and Andrea.
Thank
This
you.
has been great. Thank you so much for your conversation and all of your input and knowledge.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.